The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. The title of today's talk is Turning the Stream of Compassion Within and Making Friends with Yourself. I was preparing my talks for this retreat at Compassionate Friend Hermitage, and I turned on the radio to see if I could find the news because I wanted to keep up with what was going on as I was preparing these talks. And instead, I didn't find the news, but I heard part of a song, probably a country western song, that said something like this: I can finally look in the mirror and I can see that I'm not as good as I'm gonna be, but I'm a whole lot better than I used to be. And I thought, my God, isn't that fitting for what I'm gonna be talking about today? And how true it is for all of us. If what Rev Master Jiyu would say to someone if they were feeling very badly about their training and how they were doing, she would say, well, look at how you were 5 years ago, and you'll see that you are a whole lot better than you used to be, but not quite as good as you're going to be. And we are actually doing the best we can. And I know that some of you haven't been training for 5 years, but as you go on in your practice, you will see that things are changing and that you are doing better. I've been reading a book called, oh no, that's a different one. I have a book called Loving Kindness, and I'd like to read you a little poem in there, which says, it's called Relearning Loveliness. The bud stands for all things, even for those things that don't flower, for everything flowers from within of self-blessing, though sometimes it is necessary to reteach a thing its loveliness, to put a hand on the brow of the flower and retell it in words and in touch it is lovely, until it flowers again from within of self-blessing. And that's by Galway Kinnell. To reteach a thing its loveliness is the nature of metta, or loving kindness. Through loving kindness, everyone and everything can flower again from within. When we recover knowledge of our own loveliness and that of others, self-blessing happens naturally and beautifully. How do we turn the stream of compassion within? We first need to be willing to meditate and see what is going on in our own minds. Be aware of self-judgment, criticism, comparing ourselves to others, and let the thoughts come and go. It's really about being mindful and seeing what your mind is doing, and not just during meditation, but throughout the day. It's very simple, but not necessarily easy. There is an article on the 4 Brahma Viharas by Ajahn Susito, which I'm going to be reading later on in the week. And in it he says, how good do you have to be before you stop criticizing yourself? Judging oneself is actually very harmful. Reverend Master Jiyu said that it is the judgment of ourselves that keeps us from knowing the unborn, and that the unborn does not judge us. It is pure love. The only way I know to stop judging myself is by letting these thoughts come and go without giving them any value. And I've noticed as I've been working on these talks and preparing them, how really deeply ingrained the judgment is and how often it comes up. For many years, I judged myself very harshly, especially when I would make the same mistakes in training over and over again. when I saw the mistake, I didn't just judge myself for making the mistake, but would go on a downward spiral about how bad I was. And one day, when I was judging myself, I realized that judging myself was not helping me or anyone else. I might as well let it go and just try and do better. And gradually, through this process, I have been making friends with myself and accepting myself for who I am. And I see this as Avalokiteshvara helping me as she helps all beings. A number of years ago, during a spiritual counseling session, I was told that I might as well accept myself because I was all that I had. I wasn't able to do this very well at the time. I still wanted to be someone else. It's not just about letting go of judgments. It's also about listening and responding to what is good to do. Listening to the voice of the unborn within us. We need to make an effort to keep the precepts and do what is good to do. We need to make the effort to change and also to being mindful as much as possible throughout the day. Work on letting go over and over again. And this does take quite a bit of effort. We have to make an effort to be kind to ourselves and others in thought, in word, and in deed. Before I became a monk, I was suffering very deeply and disliked myself to the point that I wished that I was someone else. I couldn't understand why I was the way I was. I felt like I was hard and cold and lacking in compassion. Through my meditation and training, I have been able to see why this was so. When I became a monk and started to meditate, I wanted to go straight to the unborn and bypass, not look at, what was completely unacceptable to me at the time, unacceptable about myself at the time. I was extremely fearful. There were aspects of a hungry ghost, deep anger, worry, being shy, etc. Gradually, as my faith deepened and I was able to look at myself more and more and to see that there were karmic reasons for why I was the way I was, when I saw and understood these reasons, I found that I could be kind to myself and really turn the stream of compassion within. And sometimes it was me being kind to myself, and sometimes compassion actually arose from a deeper place. As you all know, training works, and we have to persevere and keep on going. And as we see them, we do have to change our old ways of acting, our habits, and this is not easy. I was reading my notes for a Dharma talk I gave in 2003, and I wrote the following. It is said that there are those who have a sudden awakening, and it's like suddenly turning on a light switch. And there are those whose awakening is like slowly turning up a dimmer switch. Or it could be called those who leap ahead and those who chip away. Some of us also seem to take several steps backwards or even stop for a while. For those of us who are somewhat slow, being content and doing one's training are important teachings to remember. When you want to know the truth, the unborn, enlightenment, peace, whatever it is that has brought you to this practice, you can't try to get it. You have to do the training in faith and trust that it will lead you to where you wish to go. This is not always easy if you were brought up in such a way that you mistrust, do not think you have much faith, or are cynical. However, the unborn is very compassionate, And if we keep on going, we are given what we need. I have had to learn this lesson of just doing the training over and over again. An aspect of my koan has been comparing my training with others, and this would often arise strongly after one of our week-long monastic retreats, even if the retreat had been a good one for me. At the end of the retreat, there would be an abbess's Dharma ceremony in which all the monks would go up to the altar and ask the abbess a spiritual question. You would hear how everyone was doing. I would often go into deep despair during or after because of my perception of how well everyone was doing and how poorly I was doing. This was a theme of mine. This came up again during the silent abbot's Dharma ceremony that occurred during the week of the funeral ceremonies for Reverend Master Daisui, the former head of our order. There was an empty chair in front of the altar, and all the monks went up and asked a question silently. While waiting to go up to ask my question in silence, I saw the line of masters, and I wasn't a master at that time, and thought how well they are doing, and I could feel myself being pulled into this despair. And immediately an answer came back to me, be content. And I immediately relaxed and accepted myself for where I was and who I was. Now, I would love it if that would come up over and over again, but we seem to be given a teaching, and then we have to just trust in it as we go on with our training. We can change in fundamental ways, but we can't become what we are not or what we would like to be. And we can blossom in the hands of the unborn in the way that is good for each of us. We don't train to become something or someone else. We are ordinary human beings who take refuge in the unborn. We are all different and perfect just as we are, and we need to train. In the most excellent mirror samadhi, it says, the sage will tell the trainee who is feeling he is low and all inferior, that on his head there gleams a jewel diadem, and on his body rich robes hang, and at his feet there is a footrest. If the trainee hears this teaching with surprise and doubt, the sage assures him that of cats there are some kinds, as also some white cows, that perfect are just as they are. Another aspect of turning the stream of compassion within is the willingness and the trust to open to what may be difficult to face. Our karma, our feelings, fears, perhaps the grief of the world. To know that we can do this and that these things aren't all there is. Don't be afraid to let negative emotions and thoughts arise, because at our core is purity, goodness, and compassion. In fact, we can't be whole unless we allow everything to arise, abide, and pass away. All our thoughts and feelings are empty and have no substance unless we give them substance by getting involved in them or trying to get rid of them. I've been reading a book called My Grandfather's Blessings by Rachel Naomi Riemann, MD, the author of Kitchen Table Wisdom, and I'd like to read you 2 paragraphs from this book. Compassion begins with the acceptance of what is most human in ourselves, what is most capable of suffering. In attending to our own capacity to suffer, we can uncover a simple and profound connection between our own vulnerability and the vulnerability in all others. Experiencing this allows us to find an instinctive kindness toward life, which is the foundation of all compassion and genuine service. Ours is not a culture that respects the sick or the old or the vulnerable. We strive for independence and competence and mastery. In embracing such frontier values, we may become intolerant of human wholeness, contemptuous of anything in ourselves and in others that has needs or is capable of suffering. The denial of a common vulnerability is the ultimate barrier to compassion. So to go back to the idea of accepting everything that arises within yourself, I'd like to read you two things. One is from A Still Forest Pool by Ajahn Chah, and this is what he says. Try to be mindful and let things take their natural course. Then your mind will become still in any surroundings like a clear forest pool. All kinds of wonderful rare animals will come to drink at the pool, and you will clearly see the nature of all things. You will see many strange and wonderful things come and go, but you will be still. This is the happiness of the Buddha. And this other poem I'm going to read is The Guesthouse, which I have a feeling most of you have heard, but I'll read it anyway. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And the last thing I'm going to quote from is from the Book of Joy, where they talk about having compassion for yourself. Self-compassion is closely connected to self-acceptance, which we discussed in an earlier chapter, but it is even more than the acceptance of ourselves. It is actually having compassion for our human frailties and recognizing that we are vulnerable and limited like all people. As a result, it is a fundamental basis for developing compassion for others. It's hard to love others as you love yourself, as both men pointed out. This is the interviewer talking about the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. If you don't love yourself. The Dalai Lama had mentioned during the week how he was shocked to hear from Western psychologists about how many of their patients wrestled with issues of self-hatred. Self-preservation, self-love, and self-care, he had assumed, are fundamental to our nature. This assumption is fundamental to Buddhist practice, so it was shocking to hear that people had to learn to express compassion, not only to others, but also to themselves. And then one of the other people who was there with them, I think he was the translator, Jinpa explains, lack of self-compassion manifests in a harsh and judgmental relationship with ourselves. Many people believe that unless they are critical and demanding, they will be failures, unworthy of recognition and undeserving of love. Psychologist Kristen Neff has identified ways to express self-compassion. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we accept that there are parts of our personality that we may not be satisfied with, but we do not berate ourselves as we try to address them. When we go through a difficult time, we are caring and kind to ourselves as we would be to a friend or relative. When we feel inadequate in some way, we remind ourselves that all people have these feelings or limitations. When things are hard, we recognize that all people go through similar challenges. And finally, when we are feeling down, we try to understand this feeling with curiosity and acceptance rather than rejection or self-judgment. It's okay not to be what you would like to be, because the truly important thing is to let go of the self, to let go of selfishness. It is not selfish to be compassionate to oneself. It is necessary. In a Dharma talk I was listening to while out at our hermitage, Rev Master Koten said that great compassion begins at the end of our selfishness, of having to have whatever it is our own way. Selfishness will never fill the hole we think we have. Great compassion fills the space vacated by selfishness. And Great Master Dogen says in the Genjo Koan, when one studies Buddhism, one studies oneself. When one studies oneself, one forgets oneself. When one forgets oneself, one is enlightened by everything, and this very enlightenment breaks the bonds of clinging to both body and mind, not only for oneself, but for all beings as well. We need to learn to be kind to ourselves, accept ourselves completely, see our basic loveliness, and yet not focus on ourselves. This is our challenge.